I gave her a phone, but I never imagined it would reveal the truth to me. My number was saved under the name Delivery Guy. Every call, every message, a secret kept from me. And then I realized our life would never be the same again. It was a quiet Saturday morning when David decided he wanted to do something special for Sarah. Their relationship, though comfortable, had become predictable over the years. He knew the small surprises mattered, the gestures that reminded her that she was loved and cherished. And so, with that thought in mind, he ventured out to the electronics store, his mind buzzing with ideas. After wandering through aisles of gadgets and devices, David's eyes fell upon the newest smartphone, sleek, elegant, and packed with features. He could already picture Sarah's reaction, the slight widening of her eyes, the soft gasp, the quick smile that always melted his heart. It wasn't just any gift. It was a symbol, a promise of care, attention, and a small attempt to reignite the spark that had, over the years, dimmed just a little. He imagined their Saturday evening, coffee in hand, watching her unwrap the box. The excitement he felt was tangible, a mixture of anticipation and the nervousness of hoping it would be perfect. With the smartphone purchased, wrapped meticulously in glossy paper with a delicate ribbon, he returned home, his mind racing with little details of how to present it in a way that felt magical. Sarah was in the kitchen when he arrived. She had been humming a tune, busy preparing breakfast. David held the gift behind his back, trying to conceal his grin. "Hey," he said casually, "I have something for you." She looked up, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "Oh, what is it?" she asked, her tone light, teasing. David presented the box like it was a treasure chest. "Open it," he urged gently. Her fingers, delicate and sure, untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper. The smartphone gleamed under the soft kitchen lights. Her eyes widened, exactly as he had hoped, and she let out a delighted laugh. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed, holding it delicately, turning it over to admire the design. "You didn't have to." David shook his head. "I wanted to. I thought, maybe this would make your life a little easier. And, well, I wanted to see that smile," he admitted, his voice soft, almost vulnerable. She reached out to hug him, her arms warm around his shoulders. For a brief moment, the world felt perfect, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. He could see the happiness radiating from her face, and a sense of pride swelled in his chest. This, he thought, was why he did it. This was why he loved her. But beneath that moment of joy, subtle hints of unease lingered. There was something in her eyes, a flicker, a hesitation, that David dismissed as a fleeting thought, perhaps a tired mind or the distraction of the day. He didn't know then that this small gift, meant to bring them closer, would become the key that unlocked a door he wasn't ready to open. As the morning progressed, Sarah busied herself with the new phone, exploring its features, installing apps, and customizing its settings. David watched her with a mixture of admiration and contentment, feeling proud of his choice. He even offered to help her set up certain functions, but she waved him off, confident in her knowledge, her smile never fading. Yet, even as he admired her focus, a small, gnawing thought began to creep in, a sensation that something subtle had shifted, a small change in her demeanor he couldn't yet place. He brushed it aside, attributing it to the excitement of the new device. He would soon learn that this gift, innocent as it seemed, had become the first step in a journey that would test every fiber of trust, patience, and love in their relationship. And as David left the kitchen to make coffee, thinking nothing more of it, Sarah's fingers danced across the screen, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk appearing on her lips, a hint of secrets waiting to be revealed, though neither of them could imagine the storm that was quietly beginning to brew. The days after receiving the new phone passed uneventfully, or so it seemed. On the surface, Sarah appeared just as she always had, smiling, chatting, preparing meals, occasionally teasing David about his old-fashioned ways. But David began to notice subtle changes, tiny habits that felt off. It started with the phone. Whenever it rang, she would excuse herself, claiming she needed privacy or that it was something work-related. Sometimes she would leave the room entirely, disappearing into the hallway or bedroom, keeping the screen turned away from him. At first, David brushed it off. Maybe she simply valued her privacy. Perhaps she felt she needed a moment to herself in the middle of the day. After all, everyone had secrets, little corners of their life that didn't need to be shared. But as the days passed, the behaviors became more consistent, and David couldn't ignore them any longer. The way she answered calls quickly, almost too quickly, speaking in a softer voice, the slight tension in her posture, her careful glances to see if he was watching, it all began to gnaw at him. There was something deliberate in her actions, a pattern that whispered of concealment, of hidden truths. Then there were the messages. She would tap away on the phone with a practiced ease, her fingers dancing across the screen as if in a private ritual. Sometimes she would lean back, chuckle softly at something David couldn't hear, and then tuck the phone into her bag or pocket with a smooth, fluid motion that suggested familiarity with secrecy. David, ever patient and trusting, tried to dismiss it as paranoia. Maybe I'm just imagining things, he told himself on more than one occasion. Maybe she's just excited about the phone, exploring new apps, or talking to friends. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe it. After all, they had built years of trust together. She wasn't someone who would deliberately betray him, or was she? A week passed, and the unease became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, David was tidying up the living room when he noticed Sarah slip her phone under the cushion of the sofa. His curiosity, tinged with concern, nudged him forward. Was she hiding something? Who was she texting? The thought, once unthinkable, began to root itself in his mind. Later that evening, they sat together in the living room. David casually picked up the smartphone to show her a funny video he had found online. She hesitated for a fraction of a second too long before taking it from him, her fingers brushing his hand in a way that felt intentional, almost rehearsed. "It's fine. I got it," she said lightly, smiling. But there was a flicker in her eyes, a shadow that David couldn't ignore. Night fell, and David lay awake in bed, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above him. He could hear Sarah scrolling quietly in the other room, her movements precise, almost deliberate. The soft glow of her screen illuminated the curtains in faint, pulsing light. It was mesmerizing, yet infuriating. What was she doing in there, alone with that phone? David tried to convince himself again. She's probably just exploring the apps. Nothing to worry about. But the voice in the back of his mind refused to be silenced. The pattern was too consistent, the secrecy too refined. Something was happening behind that delicate smile and calm demeanor, and he could feel it, a tension threading itself into the air between them. Then came the small lies. She would say she was responding to a work email or chatting with a friend. Occasionally, the timing of her messages didn't match up with who she claimed to be talking to. A soft giggle in the middle of the night, the hurried tucking away of the phone, the slightly nervous glance when he passed by. Each instance was a thread, slowly revealing a tapestry he didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. David's mind began to race with questions he didn't yet have answers to. Why the secrecy? Why the careful avoidance? What was she hiding? His trust in her, though strong, was being tested in a way he had never imagined. The house, once a haven of comfort and routine, now felt charged with tension. Every sound, every movement, every text notification became a potential clue. And yet, through it all, Sarah remained unchanged on the surface, warm, loving, engaging. She smiled at him at dinner, laughed at his jokes, and poured him his coffee in the mornings. The contrast was maddening. How could someone so familiar, so intimate, harbor something so hidden? David didn't yet know the depth of the secret, the twist that would turn his world upside down. He only knew that things were no longer as simple as they had seemed, and the phone, that innocent, beautiful gift, had become a silent observer of a truth he was only beginning to sense. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when David decided to sit in the living room with a cup of coffee, enjoying the rare moment of calm after a long day. The house was serene, the kind of stillness that made every sound stand out. He could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the faint ticking of the wall clock, and, faintly, the quiet tap-tap of Sarah's fingers on her new smartphone somewhere down the hallway. David had been trying to push aside the growing unease that had been gnawing at him over the past week. He told himself again and again, maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe it's nothing. But the subtle changes in Sarah's behavior, the way she vanished to answer calls, the hurried glances, the whispered giggles, kept tugging at the corners of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening just out of sight, something he wasn't meant to see. And then it happened. David's curiosity, a force he had struggled to contain, finally got the better of him. He casually walked over to the small table where Sarah had left her phone earlier, ostensibly to charge it. Pretending to pick up a notebook, he leaned over, his eyes inadvertently catching the edge of the screen. That's when he saw it. The contact name saved as Delivery Guy. A strange mix of confusion and disbelief swept over him. Delivery Guy? He murmured under his breath. Surely, it must be a mistake. Perhaps she had been texting a friend about a recent package, and somehow the contact had been saved that way. That made sense, didn't it? It had to. But the tiny seed of doubt had already been planted. David's pulse quickened, his mind racing. Why would she save someone's contact under such a peculiar name? Was it really a simple joke, an innocent nickname, or was there something more sinister hiding behind the words? He recalled the previous nights, the soft laughter, the hushed tones, the careful concealment of the phone. Every little action now seemed to gain new significance, a pattern emerging in the shadows of his thoughts. And yet, he wanted so desperately to believe that his wife, the woman he had trusted completely, could not be involved in something that betrayed that trust. Still, the rational part of his mind told him he needed more than speculation. He had to observe, to see for himself what this delivery guy was all about. David waited patiently, sitting just outside the hallway, pretending to read a magazine, while Sarah went about her nightly routine. Her fingers danced over the screen, her eyes fixed, her lips curling into soft smiles that made his stomach churn with unease. Then came the first call. His heart skipped a beat as the phone buzzed with the familiar ring. The name Delivery Guy flashed brightly on the screen. He watched as Sarah's expression shifted, eyes widening slightly, a quick intake of breath, and she answered with a practiced ease. "Oh, hi," she said, her voice a mixture of casual and controlled. "Just a moment." David felt a lump in his throat. Something about her tone, the way she spoke so carefully, was wrong. He realized, almost instinctively, that she wasn't just talking to a friend or a colleague. Her attention was elsewhere, her words curated, her movements deliberate. And the name on the screen, it wasn't random. It was her shield, her code, her way of keeping something hidden from him. As the conversation continued, David's anxiety grew. He caught snippets of words, fragments of sentences that made his blood run cold. "I'll be there soon. Don't tell anyone. I need privacy." Each phrase pierced him with a slow, creeping terror. He felt as if the walls of his home were closing in, the air thick with tension and unspoken betrayal. By the time she hung up, David's mind was racing. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was no ordinary contact. Delivery Guy wasn't a joke or a mistake. It was a mask, a carefully constructed lie designed to deceive him. The phone, the gift he had given with love, had become a window into a world he had never imagined existed right under his roof. He sank into the sofa, trying to steady his breathing, trying to quell the whirlwind of thoughts that threatened to consume him. Questions swirled endlessly. Who was she talking to? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why? The realization hit him like a punch to the chest. Sarah had been hiding something significant, something that now demanded to be understood, confronted, and, perhaps, reckoned with. And so, in the quiet of that evening, David made a silent vow. He would discover the truth. Whatever it took, whatever it revealed, he would uncover the secrets behind the delivery guy and finally understand the depth of the world Sarah had kept from him. The next morning, David woke with a restless tension he couldn't shake. Every creak of the house, every distant hum of the appliances, every faint sound of movement made him jump slightly. The events of the previous evening, the discovery of the delivery guy contact, had burrowed into his mind like a relentless shadow. He tried to convince himself to focus on the mundane, the coffee brewing, the headlines of the morning paper, but nothing could distract him from the gnawing feeling that something was wrong. Sarah entered the kitchen, humming softly, her phone in hand. Her casual demeanor, once comforting, now seemed layered with subtle duplicity. Every smile, every glance toward her device, felt like a coded message he wasn't meant to understand. David watched her over the rim of his coffee cup, trying to gauge her mood, trying to read any flicker of truth or guilt. It was during breakfast that he first saw it, the subtle rhythm of her eyes flicking toward her phone, the tiny, almost imperceptible tensing of her shoulders whenever it buzzed. Then came the first message. He didn't have to look at the screen. He had learned to recognize the type of text that elicited her quick, careful reaction. She read it, a faint smile creeping across her lips, and immediately tucked the device into her bag, her movements smooth, practiced. David's heart sank. He felt a cold knot form in his stomach, a combination of fear, disbelief, and heartbreak. The realization that she was communicating with someone in a way that required secrecy hit him hard. Questions surged through his mind. Who was it? How long had this been happening? How many lies had he unknowingly accepted as truth? He wanted to confront her immediately, demand answers, but a part of him, a quiet, rational, cautious part, knew it was too soon. He needed evidence, something undeniable, something concrete. Otherwise, he risked being dismissed as paranoid, as overreacting to a misunderstanding. And deep down, he feared the answers might shatter the world he had carefully built with her. Over the next few days, David became an observer in his own home. He noticed every subtle behavior. The way Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing, the quick, almost imperceptible pause when he approached, the slight edge in her tone when speaking to someone on the phone. Each instance added to the mounting evidence in his mind, each one a brushstroke in a portrait of betrayal he hadn't wanted to paint. One evening, as he returned home early from work, he saw her sitting on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, phone in hand. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of the screen illuminating her face. She laughed quietly at something on the screen, and then, as if noticing him for the first time, she looked up, a casual smile on her lips. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. David's heart pounded. He approached cautiously, sitting opposite her, pretending to browse through a magazine. His eyes, however, never left her hands, never left the screen. And then, for the first time, he saw a flicker of something that confirmed his fears. She quickly minimized the conversation window, sliding the phone onto her lap with a casualness that felt rehearsed, almost mechanical. It was then that the first signs of betrayal became undeniable. The careful glances, the hushed messages, the laughter that didn't include him. It all coalesced into a reality he could no longer ignore. He was witnessing a double life, one carefully orchestrated, one he had been blind to until now. That night, as he lay in bed, he could hear Sarah moving about quietly in the other room. The faint glow of her screen cut through the darkness, like a spotlight on a stage where he was no longer the lead actor, merely an audience member watching events unfold. The weight of the truth pressed down on him, a silent, suffocating pressure that left him restless and alert. David knew, with a chilling certainty, that the time for denial had passed. The first signs of betrayal were no longer subtle hints. They were glaring, impossible to dismiss. And while he didn't yet know the full extent of the deception, he understood that his life, their marriage, and the trust he had built over years were all teetering on the edge of collapse. The next steps he took would determine whether he could confront the truth and reclaim his life, or whether the storm of lies, carefully hidden behind Sarah's calm exterior, would sweep everything away. And in that moment, David made a quiet, determined vow. He would find out who the delivery guy was, why Sarah had deceived him, and how deep this betrayal truly went. The following week brought with it an air of tension that David could no longer ignore. Every small interaction, every casual remark, every glance from Sarah seemed to carry hidden meaning. He had spent days observing, taking mental notes, piecing together the puzzle that the phone had unveiled. And now, armed with the knowledge that his number had been recorded as delivery guy, he began to notice patterns he hadn't seen before. It happened one evening as they were preparing dinner together. The aroma of sautéing vegetables filled the kitchen, and Sarah hummed a tune as she chopped onions. The phone, resting silently on the counter, vibrated with an incoming call. David froze slightly, his eyes flicking toward her. She reacted instantly. Her hand darted to the device, snatching it up with a practiced precision. "Oh, it's just the delivery man," she said casually, a phrase she had clearly rehearsed many times. "I'll be right back." David's chest tightened. The words themselves were innocuous, almost laughable, but the context was everything. The carefully chosen alias, the timing, the way she had delivered it so casually, it all screamed deception. His mind raced as he realized the truth. Every time she spoke to the person on the other line, She had shielded them behind the innocuous delivery man excuse. She was hiding something or someone from him right under his nose. He waited silently as she stepped into the living room to speak, pretending to carry a package that didn't exist. David could hear snippets of her voice, soft laughter, hushed words, a tone that was intimate, controlled, practiced. He recognized the cadence of secrecy in her voice, the subtle cues that this wasn't a casual conversation. As the conversation continued, David's thoughts spiraled. How long had this been going on? How many calls had he missed without realizing? Each delivery was not a harmless errand, but a carefully crafted cover, a lie designed to protect a hidden truth. The realization made his stomach churn and his hands clench involuntarily. When she finally returned to the kitchen, placing an imaginary package on the counter, she smiled at him as if nothing had happened. "All good," she said lightly, brushing flour from her hands. But David knew better. He had seen the shadow behind the smile, the practiced deception that had become second nature. Over the next few days, the delivery calls became a pattern he could track. Every time the phone rang, she would excuse herself with the same phrase, disappearing behind a wall of polite lies. David started keeping a quiet log in his mind. The times, the duration, the way her behavior shifted during and after the call. Each entry deepened his growing conviction. The alias delivery guy was more than a joke. It was a mask hiding a betrayal that he was only beginning to understand. One evening, curiosity and a growing need for clarity pushed him further than before. He followed her discreetly as she took a call, pretending to be occupied with tidying the living room. From a safe distance, he could see her lips moving, hear the faint murmur of conversation, and observe the subtle, almost imperceptible signs of intimacy in her gestures. She laughed quietly, whispered reassurances, and for a fleeting moment, looked around as if to make sure he wasn't watching. David's heart pounded. He was witnessing a side of Sarah he had never imagined, a carefully constructed performance of secrecy, carried out with skill and precision. The delivery man excuse was not just a lie. It was an elaborate shield, protecting the reality of her other life. That night, David lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every gesture, every subtle clue he had observed. The anger, the shock, the betrayal swirled inside him like a storm, impossible to ignore. He realized that trust, the foundation of their marriage, had been quietly eroded by a string of deliberate, calculated acts. And yet, he did not act impulsively. He knew he needed more proof, clarity, a confrontation that would reveal the truth beyond any doubt. The alias delivery guy had given him the first tangible clue, a thread he could pull to unravel the hidden tapestry of deceit. David's mind, though heavy with the weight of betrayal, was already formulating a plan. He would uncover the identity behind the carefully chosen name, confront the deception, and expose the truth. The delivery excuse, once casual and harmless, had now become a beacon, guiding him toward the revelation that would change everything. In that moment, as the house settled into a quiet night, David knew one thing with absolute certainty. The days of hidden conversations and secret calls were numbered. The veil of secrecy Sarah had built would not hold forever, and the truth, when it emerged, would shatter the carefully curated illusions of their life together. David's patience had reached its limit. Days of observation, moments of doubt, and the quiet gnawing of suspicion had finally pushed him toward action. He needed clarity, and he needed it now. That evening, he waited in the living room under the pretense of reading, his eyes fixed on Sarah as she moved about the kitchen. She hummed, seemingly relaxed, her phone glowing softly in her hand. But David knew better. Every smile, every glance at the screen, carried a weight he could no longer ignore. The phone buzzed again. Sarah picked it up casually, as if it were nothing more than a routine alert. "Hey, yeah, just a minute," she said quietly, her voice soft. "I'll be there soon." David's heart sank. He didn't need to eavesdrop to know she wasn't talking to a delivery service. His instincts screamed that this was her lover, hidden behind the carefully chosen alias of delivery guy. He waited until she left the room, phone clutched tightly. Quietly, he followed her to the hallway. From a hidden corner, he could see her animatedly texting, laughing softly at messages, her face lit by the phone. And then he noticed it, a subtle tension in her posture, a quick glance over her shoulder. She was hiding something, someone. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Sarah froze. She muttered something under her breath, then answered, feigning surprise. David crept closer, peering through the window. Outside stood a man, casually dressed, confident. He waved, and Sarah's face lit up in a way that David had never seen directed at him. His stomach twisted. The double life, the lies, the careful excuses, it all came crashing into view. This wasn't a small secret. This wasn't harmless. This was a carefully hidden affair, orchestrated right under his roof. When she hung up the call, she turned to David with a smile that now seemed thin, almost fragile. "Everything's fine," she said lightly. David's voice was calm, measured, but sharp. "Everything's fine? Who was at the door?" She hesitated, faltering just slightly. Just someone from work," she stammered. David took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "Someone from work doesn't make you laugh like that. Don't lie to me, Sarah." Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to meet his gaze. I can explain," she whispered, voice quivering. David's chest tightened. The weight of realization pressed down on him. The delivery guy was not just a name on a screen. He was a mask for the man she had been seeing behind his back. Every call, every excuse, every smile he had once trusted now carried betrayal. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. David's mind raced with questions, disbelief, and a storm of emotions he could barely contain. He knew confrontation was inevitable. But first, he needed to witness the truth fully, to see with his own eyes what he had only pieced together from subtle clues and suspicions. That night, he stayed awake, listening to the faint sounds of the living room, the occasional soft laughter, the subtle movement of shadows. The revelation of her double life weighed heavily, yet it also sharpened his resolve. He would uncover everything. He would know the truth. And when he did, nothing would ever be the same again. David spent the next day in a haze of planning and quiet observation. The revelation of Sarah's double life had left him reeling, but it also ignited a focused determination. He wasn't going to act impulsively. He needed a plan, a way to catch the truth in a way that couldn't be denied. He studied her routines, her patterns, the subtle cues that revealed when she was expecting a call from the delivery guy. Every glance at the phone, every slight tension in her movements, every hurried whisper became a piece of the puzzle. He traced the paths she walked in the house, the rooms she preferred for privacy, even the times when she felt safe enough to relax her guard. That evening, he began putting his plan into motion. He would use the very device she had hidden behind, the smartphone he had gifted her, to set the trap. He configured a fake delivery notification, timed perfectly to coincide with the expected call. The package would be harmless, yet it would lure the lover into the open, revealing the secret she had so carefully concealed. As David worked, he whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "This ends tonight. No more lies, no more hiding." When Sarah entered the living room later, she noticed the phone lying conspicuously on the coffee table. "What's that?" she asked casually. David glanced at her, eyes sharp. "Just a delivery notification. Thought it was weird, so I checked." She laughed softly, brushing it off. "Oh, must be a glitch." But David wasn't fooled. He watched as her eyes flicked to the screen, a slight tightening in her jaw betraying her nerves. The trap was set. Minutes later, the doorbell rang. Sarah froze, her hand going to her phone instinctively. David stayed calm, standing behind the couch, watching every subtle movement. The man arrived, casually dressed, confident, unaware that he was stepping into David's carefully orchestrated plan. Sarah greeted him with a smile that now seemed rehearsed, almost rehearsed for a camera. "Hey," she said softly, her voice lighter than usual. "I wasn't expecting you." David stepped forward, letting the moment linger just long enough for tension to build. "Well, maybe you should have told me someone was coming," he said calmly, holding the phone like a silent witness to everything. The man's smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face. I mean, David's eyes locked onto Sarah's. "Explain this," he demanded, voice steady but sharp. "Who is this?" Her composure wavered, and for the first time, David saw genuine fear in her eyes. I can explain," she whispered, voice trembling. The room was charged with tension. Every glance, every word, Every hesitation amplified the gravity of the moment. The carefully constructed double life was collapsing around her, and David was the observer and arbiter of the truth. As the realization sank in for all three of them, David felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and resolve. This confrontation, meticulously planned, was the moment when all lies would meet reality. The truth, inevitable and undeniable, would finally emerge. And in that silence, as the doorbell's echo faded into the tense stillness of the room, David knew that nothing, not the smiles, not the excuses, not the years of trust, could shield the secrets any longer. The double life had been revealed, and the reckoning was about to begin. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. David stepped fully into the hallway, the dim light casting long shadows across the floor. Sarah stood frozen, her phone clutched tightly in one hand, her other hand pressed lightly against her chest as if bracing herself. The man at the door, the delivery guy, was equally stunned, his confident posture faltering as his eyes met David's. David," Sarah started, her voice wavering. David's gaze didn't shift. "Yes, it's me," he said calmly, but the weight behind his voice made the room feel colder, heavier. "Do you want to explain this?" The man swallowed, his throat dry. I didn't know I thought." "You thought what?" David interrupted, his tone steady but icy. "That you could just come here and nothing would happen? That this would stay hidden?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "David, please." But David didn't wait. He stepped closer, closing the gap, letting the truth press into the room like a physical presence. "All the calls, the messages, the lies, it ends now." The man took a step back, visibly shrinking under the weight of David's stare. You've been living a lie in my house," David said, voice tight but controlled. "Every time she said it was a delivery, you were part of it. Do you even understand what you've done?" Sarah's lips trembled as she tried to form words, but nothing came out. David's eyes flicked to her phone, still glowing softly on the table, the silent witness to all the betrayal. Every message, every secret plan, every hidden smile was now laid bare. The man's face paled. I didn't. Don't lie to me," David snapped, holding the phone up like evidence. "This is your reality now, and it ends here." Sarah collapsed onto the nearest chair, her shoulders shaking. "David, I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." David took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm, though every fiber of his body burned with anger and hurt. "Sorry doesn't fix years of lies. Not anymore." The man turned toward the door, muttering something about leaving, but David blocked the way. "No," he said firmly. "Not until everything is clear." Sarah looked at him, desperation in her eyes. "Please, David. I can explain." David shook his head slowly. "There's nothing left to explain. I know everything now. The calls, the messages, the lies you built to hide him. It's all here." He pointed to the phone. "This little device has seen more truth than you ever wanted me to know." The room was heavy with silence. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator felt loud, oppressive. The man at the door swallowed again, clearly aware that the balance of power had shifted completely. Finally, David stepped aside, allowing the man to leave, but not without a warning. "You stay away. She will be held accountable for every choice. Don't think this ends cleanly for anyone." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Sarah and David alone. The tension didn't dissipate. The betrayal was laid bare, the hidden life exposed. And in that quiet aftermath, David realized that trust, once broken, could never simply be repaired. Sarah finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "David." He turned to her, eyes steady, heart heavy. "We'll see," he said. "We'll see if anything remains between us after this." The glow of the phone illuminated her tear-streaked face. The alias delivery guy had been her shield, her secret, her deception. And now, nothing could hide it from him, nothing at all. The house was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. The quiet after the confrontation was heavy, oppressive, as if every wall, every piece of furniture held the weight of the secrets that had just been exposed. David stood in the living room, phone in hand, his chest tight with a mixture of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. Sarah sat across from him, trembling, her eyes red and wide. "David, please listen," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far." David's eyes didn't waver from the phone. Go on, he said calmly, though each word carried an edge of ice. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. No lies, no excuses. Sarah swallowed, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. It started a few months ago, she began. I met someone at work. I told myself it was just a harmless flirtation, but it got out of hand. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't. I thought I could control it, keep it hidden. David's jaw tightened. Hidden? You call months of secret calls, messages, and lies hidden? You call sneaking around, lying about every little interaction hidden. Tears streamed down her face. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I kept it secret, I could. I don't know, figure it out. But it spiraled, David. I couldn't stop. He shook his head slowly, the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. And the delivery guy? That was your clever little mask. Sarah nodded, biting her lip. I didn't want him to know you would find out. I thought it would never happen. I made a mistake, David. A huge mistake. David's hands clenched around the phone. A huge mistake? This isn't a mistake, Sarah. This is a choice. Every call, every lie, every hidden conversation was a choice. And you made it knowing the consequences. She flinched at his words. I know. I can't change what I did. I just didn't want to lose you. I thought, maybe if I controlled it, I could protect us somehow. David's voice softened slightly, though the anger remained. Protect us? You think betrayal protects anything? You think lying builds anything except walls? Sarah looked down, ashamed, broken. I understand now. I see what I've done. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, David. For a long moment, the room was silent. David's mind raced. The trust, the years of love, the future he had envisioned, all of it tangled with lies and deception. He realized that understanding the truth didn't make it easier. It made it sharper, clearer, and more painful. He finally spoke, his voice low but steady. You need to understand, Sarah. Knowing the truth doesn't fix anything. It doesn't erase the months of lies, the secret meetings, the betrayal. I need time. We need space to see if anything remains after this. Tears continued to fall from her eyes. I'll do anything, David. Anything to make this right. David looked at her, his expression unreadable. Anything? He asked quietly, almost rhetorically. It will take more than words. Actions, transparency, honesty, things you've taken for granted. She nodded, trembling. I know. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. The phone lay between them, a silent witness to all the deception, all the lies, all the choices that had led to this moment. The delivery guy had revealed the truth, and now nothing could conceal it. The foundation of their life together had been cracked, and whether it could be rebuilt remained uncertain. David leaned back, taking a deep breath. The storm of emotions raged inside him, but for the first time since the revelation, a small measure of clarity settled over him. The truth was out, and now they had to decide what came next, whether there was a path forward or whether the trust that had once bound them together was forever broken. The following morning, the air in the house was thick with unspoken tension. David moved about quietly, the usual comfort of routine replaced by a cautious vigilance. Each step, each glance, each sound seemed magnified, a constant reminder of the night before and the truths now laid bare. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee. She avoided David's gaze, staring instead at the steam curling from the cup. The silence between them was suffocating, filled with years of memories now tinged with betrayal. Finally, David broke the quiet. We need to talk about what happens next, he said, his voice steady but firm. Sarah flinched but nodded. I know. I'm ready, David. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. He studied her for a moment, his mind racing. The calls, the messages, the lies. They all have consequences. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I understand, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I'll do anything. Just please, don't give up on me yet. David's hand trembled slightly as he picked up her phone, the device that had exposed the deception. He scrolled through the messages one last time, reading every word, every secret, every small act that had hidden a life he hadn't known existed. Each line was a shard of reality, sharp and undeniable. Then came the final call. The phone buzzed, lighting up with the familiar name, delivery guy. Sarah froze, eyes wide. It's nothing, she stammered. David held the phone out, his eyes locked on hers. This is the last call, he said calmly. You have a choice here. Do you answer it, or do you finally end this? Her hands shook as she reached for the device, then hesitated. She looked at David, searching his face for a hint of forgiveness, a sign that maybe, just maybe, she could make things right. I'm done, she whispered, placing the phone back on the table. It ends here. No more lies. No more secrets. David nodded slowly, relief and caution mingling in his chest. Good. That's the first step. The room was quiet once more, but this time it was different. It wasn't the heavy silence of unspoken truths. It was a silence charged with possibility, fragile, tentative, but real. The betrayal had been revealed, the double life exposed, and now the future depended on choices, honesty, and rebuilding what had been broken. David took a deep breath and sat across from her. We have a lot to work through, he said. A lot of trust to rebuild. But at least now, we're starting from the truth. Sarah nodded, tears spilling freely. I'll do whatever it takes, David. I promise. The phone lay on the table between them, no longer a weapon of secrecy, but a symbol of the truth finally revealed. And as the morning light streamed through the kitchen window, David realized that while the road ahead would be long and painful, at least they were facing it together, honestly, openly, and without masks. The final call had ended. The reckoning had come. And now, the real challenge, rebuilding trust, healing wounds, and finding a way forward, was only just beginning.